Ladies and gentlemen, hockey time here, back again with another set of power rankings. Week 3 of the NHL season is in the books. I hope you guys had a good week. Hope your team had a good week. Hopefully, you're not a fan of the San Jose Sharks because they are team number 32. Another terrible week. They finished the month of November winless. They finished the week out with a 10-1 loss at the hands of the Vancouver Canucks, one of the worst regular season performances, or really any performance I've seen from a team in my lifetime since I've, been watching hockey as I was a kid. Um, if there was a 33rd spot, I'd put the Sharks there. If there was a 100th spot, I'd put them there. This is one of the worst teams I've seen in a very long time. No goaltending, really. Capo Kakinen gets hurt in that game against Vancouver. They can't score. They can't defend, clearly. There's no upside for this team. It's frankly very, very hard to watch at this point. Again, if you are a Sharks fan, I am deeply sorry. At number 31, dropping down 2 spots from last week, is the Chicago Blackhawks. A lot of the Bedard hype has started to die down a bit. He did have a pretty good performance this week, a couple of goals, but the rest of this team just doesn't have it, frankly. Um, Again, as I've said the last couple of weeks, this is kind of where I expect this team to be. They don't have the depth of talent that's needed to push them through the games, especially against some of these better teams. They've played Vegas a couple times, they've played Boston a couple times, and their record's really starting to reflect that. As their schedule gets a bit easier, their record might improve a bit, but frankly, again, this team does not have the talent that it needs to be successful this season. Um, it's going to be a long year for them. Not nearly as long as it might be for San Jose, but they're definitely in for a long run here. Number 30, dropping 4 spots. This is tough for the Calgary Flames. They lose the Heritage Classic to Edmonton. They frankly got outplayed all over the ice. Markstrom has continued to struggle this week. Um, they can't really find ways to score. The highlight of their week this week was Connor Zary coming in and getting his first NHL goal, providing a bit of a spark to that lineup, but they still lose that game to Dallas. So they, much like their counterparts in Alberta, have to get things figured out pretty quickly here if they want any chance of making the playoffs. But there's already a lot of talk, on, for example, the Jeff Merrick show, and of course all over Twitter about some of the pending UFAs no longer being as interested as they may have been to start the season. Not that there was a ton of interest to begin anyway, but yeah, Calgary needs to get their ship righted pretty quickly here if they have any hope of recovering their season. If they can't do that, it's going to be much like Chicago, a very, very long year with a lot of unhappy fans. At number 29, we have my guys, the Washington Capitals. The toughest news this week, of course, came with Nick Backstrom deciding to step away from the game, at least for now. It doesn't sound super promising for him to be coming back. Of course, he came from pretty serious off-season injury. Tried to tough it out for a bit, but again, he's age is catching up with him, and B, it's hard to come back from these major injuries, especially when you're on the flip side of 30. So I feel for Backy, obviously, if this is it for his career, I'm going to miss him dearly. He's going to be, go down as one of the most important pieces to Ovi's historic goal run whenever Ovi's career ends. But for this team as a whole, it's been a tough week. I mean, inconsistent goaltending is putting it lightly. Darcy Kemper has not been really what we need him to be. If this team has any chance of getting even close to the playoffs, I mean, their game against the Islanders the other day, he gives up 2 goals on 2 shots in the first. You just can't have that if you're going to be a winning hockey team. So tough week for the Caps, hoping they can rebound, but really they have not been showing a lot of signs of life since their couple game win streak against against the Devils and the Minnesota Wild. Moving up 3 spots are the Columbus Blue Jackets, despite having a 1-2 or 1-3 record on the week. They're the beneficiary of a couple teams having very bad performances and hence allowing them to jump over them. Um, they finally got a pretty solid game out of Elvis Merzlikins last night. Their scoring has still been very inconsistent. Their big guys are not really there. Obviously, missing Line hurts that quite a bit. But this team just needs to kind of round into some kind of form. I think, again, they're going to need to score more goals on a consistent basis if they want to find consistent success. But definitely some signs of life for the Blue Jackets, who, again, I think are going to be in it for a long season. They do have some promising young pieces that I think are going to grow throughout the year for them, which is good. But again, just kind of a tough week for them. But again, because of the teams behind them now playing pretty poorly, they jump up a couple spots. At number 27, the same spot as last week, is the Edmonton Oilers. Again, they do get the win in the Heritage Classic over Calgary. They looked all right that game. Stuart Skinner was pretty good. And then they go into Dallas. They outshoot them mightily and can't come away with the win. I forget what the exact shot line was, but it was something like 4. I know they got 49 shots. I forget exactly how many Dallas got, but it was nearly half of what the Oilers got. and to not come away with winning that game is just unacceptable. Sam Gagne scored 2 of the 3 goals. When you have guys like McDavid, Draisaitl, Evander Kane, Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Sam Gagne should not be the guy that needs to keep you in games. And if you're Stuart Skinner, you got to make another save. It's the same problems that the Oilers have been having all year to start the season, and they, much like Calgary, need to right their ship quickly if they want any chance of getting into the playoffs. And frankly, right now, I don't know if I see that happening. I mean, both of their goaltenders look so unconfident in their own play. It's I don't know. I feel for the Oilers fans because the expectations were so high coming into the season. McDavid and Draisaitl are still doing pretty much everything they can to try to spark something in this team, but it's just not happening at this point, and it's frankly pretty disappointing to watch from a team that again had very, very high preseason expectations. Number 26, dropping a spot, is the Nashville Predators. They went 1-2 on the week. A big one against Toronto, frankly, but then losses to both Vancouver and Seattle are kind of tough. Vancouver's been rolling. I don't really blame them too much for that loss, but Seattle's another team that's been struggling to score. Those two teams are actually quite similar. But again, just their lack of offense is going to start to bite them over the course of the year. I expect them to be around this point for much of the season. UC Saros didn't have a great game against Seattle, which obviously doesn't help. And then Kevin Lankinen played in the game against Vancouver, and he kind of got lit up against, again, a Vancouver offense that's been pretty high firing to this point in the season. So I feel like I've said this every week, but we'll see if Nashville can kind of find some scoring. And they don't have a ton of depth on the roster to do that, but who knows? Maybe they find some depth players, some call ups. I don't know, but I just don't see a lot of offense being sparked from the lineup that they currently have in place. At number 25, moving up 5 spots, is the aforementioned Seattle Kraken. They had a pretty solid week. Their only loss came at the hands of the Florida Panthers, and for those of you that watched my TikToks that didn't get to watch the game, you know it came on a pretty unlucky bounce for Joey Decord. He went out to play the puck behind the net. Crazy bounce off the stanchion, bounces right out in front. The Panthers bury it. It's a 1 goal game there. Otherwise, they beat both the Lightning and, of course, the Predators. So a pretty solid week from them. They've started to find their groove a little bit in the scoring department. 10 goals through 3 games for them, which is good. They need to keep that up if they're going to find their way back into the playoffs. This isn't a team that's going to get elite level NHL goaltending. They're going to get good at best goaltending. And you're going to need goals to support that if you want to be a successful team. So it's a good week for them. We'll see if they can continue the momentum. It's kind of a combination here of them having an okay week and, again, the teams that have dropped behind them having pretty poor weeks. Some of these teams that we expected to be better, like Edmonton and the Caps and the Flames, slowly seeing their expectations dwindle quite a bit. Hence the Kraken rising. So we'll see if they can keep it up. It was a good week for them. I don't know exactly who they have coming up on the schedule, but as they start playing some tougher teams, this is where their scoring is really going to need to keep up if they want to continue to be successful. But again, good week from the Kraken. We'll see if they can keep that up moving forward into week 4. At number 24, dropping 7 spots. This is a pretty big adjustment for them, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They lose to both Ottawa and Anaheim this week. They're only 2 games that applied to this power ranking. Really, the Ducks game especially hurts them a ton. I mean, they were in a very good position to win that game. They had 2 5-on-3 power plays. They did capitalize on one, but then out of the box at the end of the game for the second 5-on-3, Mason McTavish comes in and buries the dagger. So, I don't know. I mean, this team, the jump that they seem to have at the beginning of the season just has seemed to come and go. Jari's been inconsistent. Nedeljkovic is now hurt, so there's no longer any barrier for error behind Tristan Jarry, which is not really what you want to see if you're a Penguins fan. Malkin's cooled down a little bit, so just a lot of things going the wrong direction for the Penguins. I'm not overly concerned about this team like I am for the Oilers and for the Flames, but I believe points-wise, they're last in the Eastern Conference, which of course is concerning. We're now 10 games in. But we'll see if they can rebound again. They have a lot of skilled guys on their team, a lot of older talent, but they should not be underperforming this badly to the point that they're, -3 goal differential, only 26 goals in 10 games. They need to be a little bit more productive, especially on the offensive side for a team that is not super sound defensively. But we'll see if they can rebound in the coming weeks. They do definitely need to get things going. 1 win out of 5 games is not going to be good enough, of course, to get them anywhere near the playoffs either. Number 23, dropping just 1 spot, is the St. Louis Blues. They had an all right week. They went 1-1, beat the Devils tonight, but of course lost earlier in the week to Colorado. This team, again, their biggest struggle is just that they can't seem to score goals. Binnington's been great for them. I think they've only given up 25 goals through the 9 or 10 games that they've played, but they've only scored 19. So, again, this is kind of a problem that we saw coming for this team. They don't have the worst offensive depth, but they don't have the best. But I mean, when your goalie's playing as well as Bennington is for them lately, I mean, they got to get another couple goals per game for this to start to turn around. Um, Kind of a back and forth team. They, show up for one game. For example, last week, their game against Calgary, they win 3-0. Largely, again, good performance by their by their goalkeeping. Excuse me. Then they turn around the next night. They have Vancouver and they get smoked 5-0. This week they lose to Colorado 4-1. Couple day break, go over to New Jersey and win 4-1. So it's tough to read this team. I mean, they're so all over the place. Again, if they can just start getting some more production out of their forwards, they're going to be fine because Bennington's playing pretty well. But to this point in the season, they've been just too back and forth to put them anywhere higher than 23rd. If their offense can start to produce more, they're going to be in good shape. At number 22, despite a 1-2 record on the week, is the Montreal Canadiens. This team again just refuses to get taken out of games. I mean, they play a super gritty game against both the Coyotes and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas, of course, took them very, very deep in the game. I think they won it in the last 30 seconds off a Shea Theodore goal. And then their win earlier in the week coming against the Jets team that's struggling. They're desperate for wins, and Montreal takes care of them. So um, they're a team that just, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jake Allen's been great to this point, but they seem to just like not understand where they're supposed to be in the standings, which is hilarious because you have teams that take them lightly. They come in, Jake Allen stops like 40 shots and they win 2-1 or 3-2. Has to be super frustrating to play against, but again, another one of those teams that's just overperforming expectations. Pretty fun to watch. We'll see if they can keep it up, but for now, they just continue to be a thorn in the side of pretty much every team that they play. All right, ignore the fact that this hat is just magically appearing on my head. My recording kind of failed, so we're doing a second take of this for the last half of the video. Number 21, the Minnesota Wild. The Wild have been struggling to get consistent goaltending from either Fleury or Gustafsson. Kind of a weird start to the year for this team. They've had a little bit of a bite from the injury bug as well. Both Matt Boldy and I think Jared Spurgeon missing a bit of time. Boldy's back late this week, so good news for them on that front. But nonetheless, their goaltending's been struggling quite a bit. Record doesn't really reflect how well the team's been playing offensively, I think. So if they can start to get just a few more saves through their games, they're going to be fine. But for now, I do have to keep them down in this third row until they get one of Fleury or Gustafsson going, at which time their record will probably start to jump a good bit. 20 dropping 2 spots are the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers' momentum has seemed to slow down a little bit here. They went 1-2 on the week. A good game today against Buffalo, but their previous 2 games not so much. Carter Hart also went down with an injury. Seems like he may miss a few weeks, which is not good news for Philly because he's been one of the biggest reasons why they've been winning their games. And frankly, Sam Emerson has not been good aside from the game he had today in the games that he's gotten into. So I believe they called up Cal Peterson. Felix Sandstrom's hurt, so likely that he gets the start against Los Angeles on Saturday. We'll see how that goes for him. Obviously, probably a bit of an emotional game playing his former team and also his first NHL start of the year. So we'll see how Peterson does and how Ersson does holding the fort down while Carter Hart is away. But frankly, my expectations for this team are not very high, especially in the weeks the Hart's missing. Number 19 is Arizona. The Coyotes have found a way to stay gritty and stay in most of their games. They absolutely took care of the Blackhawks earlier in the week, beating them, I think, 8-1. That was a pretty ugly game. But their depth scoring got things done in that game. It wasn't Schmaltz, it wasn't Keller, it wasn't Barrett Hayden. Like, all their big guys were held either lightly on the score sheet or completely off it, while their second, third, and fourth lines went crazy on poor Peter Mrazek and Arvid Soderblom. So it's really all good things from the Coyotes. Their goaltending's been great between Ingram and Karel Vejmelka. Their defense has been good. Again, we expected this team to improve coming into the year, but I don't know that we expected them to be nearly as good as they've been playing. We'll see whether or not they can keep this up, but they've been a really fun team to watch. Number 18, moving up 6 spots, are the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks are in a pretty similar spot, frankly, to the Coyotes. They've just been on a little bit more of a roll lately. Lucas Distal has probably become the number 1 goalie, especially now with John Gibson going down with an injury. But he's been fantastic in the games he's played. I mean, frankly, looked like more of a top 10 NHL starting goalie than an NHL backup goalie, which is great news for the Ducks. This young group of defensemen has been outstanding to this point, largely led by Pavel Minchikov, who's been fantastic. Their scoring has been pretty good. If they can get a little bit more points from Zegras, that's even scarier for the rest of the league. So another team that's overperforming their expectations pretty significantly. We'll see if they can continue that over the coming weeks. Number 17, dropping 2 spots, are the Jets. The Jets just need to get a couple more saves from one of Hellebuck or Bressois, and they should be okay. They're not a team that scores a bunch, and Hellebuck's numbers, especially this week, were not great. Bressois, I think, only got into one game, and he wasn't great in that one either. So, I mean, much as has been the case for the last few years, this team's success hinges on Connor Hellebuck playing well. He hasn't been playing well, hence they drop in the rankings. If he can continue to play at the level we expect Connor Hellebuck to play, they'll probably climb back up the rankings. But for the meantime, while Hellebuck is struggling, the team's going to continue to struggle. We'll see if they can dig themselves out of that hole starting on Saturday. Number 16, moving up 4 spots, are the Islanders. This one pains me just because they play a pretty boring brand of hockey, but it's working for them, so I'm sure they're going to keep doing it. This team's gotten a lot of saves this week. Varlamov was fantastic. I think he got back-to-back shutouts. Sorokin, after struggling a little bit to start the year in games 3, 4, and 5, has been great. Yeah, I mean, they're playing pretty on-brand Islanders hockey. Not a lot of goals for, but very few goals against. And again, that's been working for them, so I don't expect much to change there. Number 15, also moving up 4 spots, are the Buffalo Sabres. This team's really back and forth for me. I feel like they shouldn't be as high as they are, but again, I update these daily after the games, and this is where they've ended up. So their goaltending has a little bit of a hiccup now because both Levi and Eric Comrie are hurt. Ukko Pekka did not play great today against Philadelphia, but he was good in his past 2 games. So if he can stay consistent, this team should be fine. They have a lot of talent up front that can get them a lot of goals. They just need the saves. So as long as UPL can provide those until one of Levi or Eric Comrie come back, and then they have a little bit more of a buffer should UPL not be playing so great as he did today, this team's going to be fine. Again, doesn't really feel like they should be as high as 15th given their record and their statistics, but here we are. Number 14, the same spot they were at last week, are the Ottawa Senators. Another team that's been struggling a bit to find consistency. They seem to just not choke away games, but not manage to get the extra goal when it's needed. Their goaltenders' numbers haven't been great, but there have been a lot of saves, especially from Korpisalo, where it's like he's really making some fantastic stops to keep them in games. Take, for example, the game against LA. They got outshot like handily in the first period, like 21-4, 21 to like something ridiculous. And Korpisalo keeps it tied headed to the second. You can't waste an effort like that. But they end up finding a way to do that, and they lose that game against the Kings. So if they can get rid of that tendency, they're going to be okay. The bad news for them is that they're now down 4 of their NHL defensemen. I think Artem Zub, Travis Hamonic, Eric Brenstrom, and Thomas Chabot. So hopefully the injury timetables for those guys aren't super long. Otherwise, this team might find themselves struggling a bit in the next coming weeks. But we'll see as that injury news comes out as we get updates from the staff. Hopefully none of those injuries are super long term, of course. Number 13, dropping a spot, are the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings, I think, are kind of settling into where they belong in the rankings. They were really hot to start the year. They've cooled off a bit. They're still scoring a ton, but their goaltending is not performing at the clip that it was to start the year, which, again, I think is to be expected with a tandem of Ville Husso and James Reimer. I do hope Alex Lyon can get himself into a game here. If we're getting into, double digits game played, I think this was kind of expected to be a 3-goalie team to start the year, and of course, Lyon has not touched the crease in an NHL game yet. So we'll see if he can get into a game and see what he looks like. I mean, James Reimer, frankly, has given them no reason to turn to him, which is part of why he hasn't played. But would like to see him get into a game after the end of the year he had last year. And frankly, it's just not great to have a guy sitting in the press box for multiple weeks at a time. Number 12, dropping a spot as well, are the Florida Panthers. This team has been playing all right. It's not really a factor of their own play that has them dropping, but more some teams leapfrogging them. So Bob's been better this week than he was the weeks prior. Again, some of their bigger guys are still struggling a bit to score. Matt Kachuk's got a handful of points. I think he's actually at a point per game, but only 1 goal. So if he can find the goal scoring touch again, they're going to be just fine. And of course, they're still without Ekblad and Montour, who the good news for them sounds like they're going to be back quicker than expected. As long as they can tread water until then, like I said last week, this team's going to be just fine. And for now, they're just that. They're number 12. Number 11, dropping 2 spots. Again, not too much of a factor of their own play, more so teams jumping them, but the Tampa Bay Lightning. 0-2 this week, which is obviously not great, but really just 2 games which they got kind of outdueled. I mean, the game against Seattle earlier in the week, Philip Grubauer is just better than Jonas Johansson. Hard to fault them on that game. Of course, you'd like a 4th goal if you can get it, but you can't always expect to score 3 or more in every game. So The Lightning fall just a couple spots here. Not overly concerned about them. They've still been playing pretty well without Vasilevsky. If they can continue to do that, they're still going to be just fine in this Atlantic Division, especially with the way some of these other teams are playing. Number 10, speaking of some other teams, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. This team has frankly just looked disinterested this week. They go 0-3. Joe Woll had his first pretty shaky game. Samsonov had an okay game against Nashville and then a great game against Boston, but they can't get him enough goals to find a win. This team just doesn't look all that interested. I mean, the sandpaper that they brought in to be sandpaper has not been sandpaper. You got Tyler Bertuzzi laughing at his former teammates' jokes. At least it looked that way on the bench. And Ryan Reeves, frankly, looks to be playing hurt. He's even slower than he usually is, and he's not really laying hits at the pace he was to start the year. So hopefully he can get healthy. The Leafs don't have a ton of flexibility to bring people up and down because of their cap constraints, but we'll see if they can figure it out. They still need consistency in net. Samsonov hopefully can build off the game against Boston and continue that forward into, I think they play the Sabres Saturday. So we'll see if he can continue that momentum. If he can, this team's going to be in a better spot because their defense isn't going to get it done for them. Their goal scoring usually will, but in games like the one against Boston, they need exceptional goaltending for those high power offenses. So we'll see if the Leafs can turn it around this week. 0-3 is not what you expect from this Leafs team. Number 9, dropping 2 spots in the last of the teams to get really leapfrogged, is the Carolina Hurricanes. I believe they went 1-1 on the week, but not really playing poorly in those 2 games. Their goaltending's finally settled back into things. They lose a close one to the Rangers, but again, only 2 goals against. Hard to blame Freddie Anderson on that one. You just need a couple more goals. This team hasn't had trouble scoring typically, so kind of a one-off for them to only get 1 in a game, but nonetheless, not worried about this Hurricanes team. Their offense has been great. It looks like their defense and their goaltending has kind of settled down a bit. So, assuming that stays par for the course, this team's going to be just fine. I expect them, frankly, to pop back up the list, assuming some of the teams in front of them come back down to earth a little bit. But maybe the teams ahead of them have found a new standard. So, speaking of those new teams in front of them, number 8, moving up 5 spots, are the LA Kings. The Kings have been just buzzing this week. Cam Talbot has settled into the starting role. The offense is scoring at a fantastic rate, and it's coming from really all 4 lines, which is kind of what we expected out of this Kings team. They have some of, if not the best center depth in the entire league. Their wingers have been doing great. Quentin Byfield, though not scoring a ton, it looks very comfortable on this first line this year. And their defense is still strong. Drew Doughty found the fountain of youth, scoring, I think, 3 goals in 2 games earlier this week. So the Kings really have everything going for them at the moment. I don't know whether I expect them to stay this high or not, but if Cam Talbot especially can continue to play well, I don't see any reason why this team can't stay as high as they are. Number 7, a team jumping 3 spots, are the Vancouver Canucks. After their shellacking of the San Jose Sharks earlier in the week, they now lead the NHL in goals for, and of course Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith have been playing pretty well themselves. So this team's really got everything going for it as well. They have, of course, in my opinion, better goaltending than the Kings, with not nearly as much depth up front. However, their depth players have actually been playing pretty well too, and of course you have guys like Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, and JT Miller who have been popping off for them to start the year. So if they can continue to score at the pace they're scoring, and Thatcher Demko can stay healthy, frankly, this team I think has a decent shot at making the playoffs, especially given the way that some of the other teams in the Pacific, looking at you, Edmonton and Calgary, have been playing. Number 6, dropping 3 spots, are the Colorado Avalanche. They finally give Alex Georgiev a break, which was much needed. Ivan Prosvetov comes in and gets them a win. But frankly, they just look a little bit out of sorts. Back-to-back shutouts, of course, hurts for a team that has a ton of scoring depth, but not overly concerned about the team. Ryan Johansson has looked like a great fit so far. I think they just need to find a way to be a little bit more consistent in some of those games. I expect them to have a bounce-back week. They're not a team that likes to go on these big losing streaks like some other, more back-and-forth top-end teams. The Avs tend to be pretty consistent, so I expect them, frankly, to probably pop back up another spot or 2 next week. But they need the results to do that, so we'll see how they do starting week 4. Number 5, jumping a spot largely due to the drop of the Colorado Avalanche, are the New Jersey Devils. This team has 2 good wins against the Minnesota Wild and then kind of a tough loss against the St. Louis Blues. Bad news for them, especially in this Blues game, is that Jack Hughes goes down with an injury. Hopefully nothing too long-term for him. But if he goes down, that's obviously a massive loss. He leads the league in points so far. So tough for the Devils if that is a long-term injury, but we'll see what comes of that in the coming days, I'd assume. Nonetheless, they're still scoring at a pretty good pace. Obviously, the Blues team is tough to score against. We saw that today pretty clearly, but They haven't really had too many issues yet. Their goaltending's a little bit below average. You'd like to see at least one of Schmid or Vanacek having a save percentage a little closer to 900. But this team scores so much that it's really not been a problem, at least to this point. But now with Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes out, we'll see if that's long term, how that affects their ability to score goals. But for now, I do have them in this top row at number 5. Number 4, jumping 4 spots thanks to a 6-game winning streak, are the New York Rangers. The Rangers were frankly a bit undervalued, I think, last week on this list. They were kind of in the middle of starting this win streak, and now it has evolved into a full 6-game win streak, much of which was on the road. Their power play is clicking. Igor Shesterkin has looked fantastic. Very similar, frankly, to the Canucks and LA Kings. They kind of have everything going for them. Bad news for them recently was after the game against Carolina, it looks like Adam Fox is going to be headed to LTIR. So we'll see how they can handle things without him there. Frankly, this team has a lot of depth. I'm not overly concerned, but he's a Norris caliber defenseman, so losing that is not for nothing, of course. So we'll see if the Rangers can continue to be consistent without Fox. Again, not overly concerned, but we need the results to prove that before we make decisions on whether or not we move them. Number 3, jumping 2 spots, are the Dallas Stars. This team is just firing on all cylinders. Jake Ottinger looks great. Scott Wedgwood's been good in the game he's played. Their depth has started to wake up a bit. Their big guys are scoring too. Really not much else to say about the Stars. They're doing exactly what I thought they were going to do, and I think many other hockey fans around the league thought they were going to do as well. So we'll see if they can keep it up. Frankly, I expect them to be here for quite a bit, especially if Jake Ottinger can stay healthy and keep playing the way he's been playing, because for the first time in a good while, they have a lot of consistent goal scorers, which is something we have not been able to say about the Stars. Maybe not so much last year, but the 3 or 4 years prior to that was not the case. Now they have a gross amount of scoring. So we'll see if they can keep it up. Not worried about the Stars whatsoever at number 3. Number 2 and number 1 stay the same as last week. Number 2 is Boston, and number 1 is the Vegas Golden Knights. These teams are 9-0-1 and 10-0-1 respectively. Both have been playing fantastic. Both goaltending tandems have been alternating back and forth and have not found any faults. Frankly, Thompson and Hill have been the second best set of goaltenders in the league, aside from Ullmark and Swayman, which I wouldn't have expected coming into this year. I knew they were both good. I did not expect them to be this good. But again, both these teams have a lot of similarities. A handful of superstar guys, ridiculous amounts of depth both up front and on defense, and it's been showing. They've really shown no faults in their games to this point. Until one of them cracks, I don't see either of these teams going anywhere. And frankly, the way they've been playing, I don't know who's going to be able to find a way to beat them, because they've just got everything clicking for them, which is scary for the rest of the league. But that's it for the Week 3 Power Rankings. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know if you think I have your team too high, too low, if there's a rival team that's too high or too low. And we'll see what happens with this board starting in Week 4. So thanks as always for watching. I really appreciate it. Leave a like if you enjoy these types of videos. Subscribe as well if you'd like to get notified when these get posted. It is free, and we will catch you guys at the very least next Friday for another Power Rankings. Thanks for watching.